Alright, hi there, Tyler Thompson, Fishe Games, managing partner over here. I wanted to make a quick video sort of laying out some foundational information about our revenues as sort of the basis for a couple of videos I want to make here in the future about some of the things that we do. And so I just have a few charts here going through our revenue and where it comes from. Generally speaking, I'm going to keep the raw values to ourselves to save us the embarrassment of how low they actually are, since we get paid mostly in fun over here at Fishe Games. But here we are. So first I just have a revenue by month breakdown going back to January of 2019, although there was no revenue in January of that year. We didn't get our start until late February 2019. It didn't really kick off until March, so you can see a little bit here in February, a little bit more in March, and then that was when we released, right in that period is when we released our first couple of Zweihander supplements, and so that's where we started, is the Zweihander Community Content Program, Thicker Perilous Library, and through March, April, and then into mid-May we released a couple more things, and you can see the revenue held relatively steady there. This was of course the period where Tyler Urish and myself were finishing up our third year of law school, right before bar prep began. We had the brilliant idea of diving into publishing during what was going to be one of the busiest summers of our lives, so that was really a smart idea on our part, and you can see pretty big dip June, and then July bounces back by August, but we really didn't release anything during that period just because bar prep is a full-time job and a half, and just didn't have any time or energy to do so. And that kind of carried on through August, September, as we were adapting to post-law school life, post-bar life, and then our new jobs. But anyway, after that you can see a fairly steady trend upward through 2019 and then into 2020. March of this year, the beginning of the lockdowns, when we really had a lot of time on our hands to really start getting a lot of more work done for Fishe Games, and I think it shows on the chart, the little jump, and then nice steady gains. The one thing that really stands out on the entire chart here is, of course, October of 2020, which is when we had the Roguetober sale. Several other indie publishers and ourselves, our entire catalog was discounted pretty heavily, and we got free publicity from DriveThruRPG for that. And you can see the result. This month being higher twofold than any month that had preceded it, and still much higher than the months that have come since. It'd be nice if we could replicate that every single month, but it's not every month that DriveThru gives you free promotion. So anyway, steady growth the whole time through. January I haven't updated on here yet because I'm still waiting on a couple of numbers, but it is higher than December. It's probably right about here compared to prior months. And February I'm expecting to be pretty similar to that as well by the time all is said and done. You can't quite tell without looking at the data, but from 2019 to 2020 we saw an over 300% increase in sales revenue, which is wonderful. That's something that I'd like to do again in 2021, although I'm not entirely sure it's all that realistic at this point. But we'll see. There hasn't really been a big jump this year yet, since we've been working on a lot of really large projects that just haven't hit the market, so we've spent a lot of energy that just isn't being reflected in the data just yet. Hopefully here soon, the spring, summer, and fall, when all of those projects start wrapping up, we'll be able to start sort of reaping those gains a little bit. So you can see a little bit on that chart where the money's coming from, but here's the 2020 breakdown of the specific platforms that we're getting our revenues from. DriveThruRPG, both in 2019 and 2020, makes up the vast majority of it, 90%, which is not all that surprising. We are exclusive with DriveThruRPG, which means that we get an extra 5% on our publisher sales there. The trade-off being that we can't leverage a lot of the other marketplaces for digital projects that we might otherwise like to. Um, and maybe one day we'll change that, but we just haven't quite gotten around to it yet. Amazon, very small little chunk. Twitch, we only monetized Twitch in, I think, October of 2020, so 4% for 1/3 of the year is not something to sneeze at. And then we try to keep our company expenses pretty low, and so that leaves us with a lot of extra revenue that we don't really need to distribute right now, and is otherwise just kind of sitting idly. So we direct that towards various investments to help generate some revenue in the meantime. The goal being to ultimately pay all of our regular monthly expenses for the company with just investment revenue, which so far we've been pretty successful at doing. So that's about 2.5% just from investment revenue so far. Now, since DriveThruRPG is the vast majority of our revenue, it's worth breaking down those numbers a little bit more, just into publisher, community content program, and then affiliate revenue. For those of you unfamiliar with the affiliate program, it is something that you can activate with DriveThruRPG with an email to them. It should be on your account page if you're looking for information about it. It just lets you get 5% of any sales that are made through your little affiliate link that you use. If you're like me, you may share a lot of links to different things on there, regardless of whether there's an affiliate program. So I figured, why not activate that and gain the free benefits, and as a result, it makes up a small little chunk of our 2020 DriveThruRPG revenues. That 3.4% is actually down from 2019, so I'm not using it as well as I should be, but that's okay. It's just free money on the table. The CCP revenues, that's almost entirely from the Zweihander community content program, and then publisher is just everything that's published through our name and not a community content program or something else on the platform. In 2019, this chunk, the CCP chunk, was much bigger. It was much closer to 75% rather than 50. So we've definitely gained our publisher revenues. I'd like the publisher revenues to be more than half, and there's a variety of marketing reasons for that, as well as just control reasons, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. Maybe in 2021. No complaints. So 2019, we were strictly writer-publishers. We didn't really do anything else to bring in revenue. 2020, we were able to diversify a little bit. Peter of Parts Per Million Games sort of hooked us up with some editing gigs over at the Zweihander community content program, and we now have edited a large number of the products over there, including the Lowborn fanzine. Of course, the streaming, once again, we got that monetized in late 2020. And then this other section is the affiliate program and investment revenue primarily. So I'm pretty happy with this spread. Editing work is fairly easy to do. It doesn't require a lot of creative bandwidth on our part, which is always kind of the hard thing when it comes to being a writer-publisher, is having new ideas of things to make, getting it all put together, and we do all of that in-house, so it can be a lot of work. So we're happy to do the editing work that we get, and then of course happy to have our writing still making up the majority of what we do. I'd like for the streaming share to get a little bit bigger, mostly because it's a lot of fun for us to do. We rather like doing the streaming. It's much lower stress and energy input compared to the writing or editing or anything like that. And it's also a good opportunity to push the other products, the other materials that we do. So it really does serve a variety of benefits, and it'd be nice to have a better excuse to do it more often than we do right now. And then finally, a quick breakdown by the IP that we are using for different things, different products. So 2019, the vast majority of the materials that we published and the revenue that we brought in from those were Zweihander. It's where we started. It's where we still spend a lot of our time and energy. So it's only natural that it would be the vast majority of our revenues. A little bit from Black Spear, which is our house-made fantasy game. Very small portion from 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. A nice chunk from the Ironsworn system resource document. That is our almost entirely from our Adamsworn, which is a post-apocalyptic little chat book for Ironsworn. Small chunk from the Crossroad Chronicler, which is our solo play fanzine. And then that was essentially all that we published for in 2019. Not a very diverse spread, and we're almost entirely beholden to the whims of the Zweihander Community Content Program and the publishers over at Grim and Perilous. Come to 2020, we've certainly done a better job of spreading out where we're getting our money from. Zweihander still makes up more than half, which I don't love that that's still the case, but we do still spend a lot of energy there. It's where a lot of our editing work is done, so it only makes sense, and not a whole lot we can do about that except work harder at everything else as well. Black Spear, now out for the full year rather than just a couple of months in 2019, makes up a nice little chunk of the revenues, 15% almost. Can't complain about that. I'm very pleased with how successful that's been, relatively speaking. 5e, still a very modest 1.5%. We really don't spend a lot of energy on 5e, and that market's pretty competitive, so no surprises there either, but I do think it's notable given that it sort of dominates the market generally. OpenQuest, little small chunk there. I rather love OpenQuest. I think it's a great little game, and I like what it stands for. The sort of open, basic roleplay, Glorantha type setting. It's great. Crossroad Chronicler, even more 2020 than it was in 2019. A little bit from Old School Essentials, a little bit from Other. That Other, I believe, is mostly some third-party stuff we did for Against the Dark Master. I think the most notable thing here compared to 2019 is Ironsworn SRD is actually a larger chunk than it was in 2019. So 16% from 9%. We haven't released anything new for the Ironsworn SRD since 2019, so Adamsworn has really been doing a lot of heavy lifting, even more than a year since its release. I think that's really interesting and makes me think we probably need to explore publishing more for that system. I'm pretty sure that Adamsworn is our single best-selling product, so maybe I should read the tea leaves there and take the hint, make some more Ironsworn materials, maybe one day soon. So anyway, where are we going from there? Like I mentioned, I'd like to see another triple digit growth here for our general revenues by month. Like to see much more diversity in both the source, the platform, DriveThruRPG, Amazon, so on, as well as the IPs that we're using here. I'm thinking that this year the 5e share is probably going to grow quite a bit. We have a pretty big project that we're working on that I think is going to be primarily directed towards 5e. I'd like for Black Spear to grow as well. And then we also have a couple of games that we're probably going to release this year. Tachyon's coming out hopefully this spring, and then I started a couple other projects recently that might break this up a little bit, take a little bit from the Zweihander share. So anyway, there's a little bit of a history about our company's growth and where we direct a lot of our energy. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up in the comments or elsewhere. Um, yeah, see you in the next one.